Welcome back to MustardHub Voices Behind the Build. In these episodes, I sit down with the people building, backing, and running better workplaces. I'm your host, Curtis Forbes, and my guest today is Sean Dazet. Sean leads partnerships at Oyster, a global employment platform that helps companies hire and manage talent anywhere in the world. With more than 2 decades of experience scaling revenue teams across high-growth startups, PE-backed ventures, and global SaaS businesses, Sean has built the partnerships and ecosystems that drive market expansion and competitive advantage. He's known for turning strategy into growth engines, unlocking new revenue streams, and accelerating momentum at every stage of a company's journey. Sean got his start at HubSpot in the early days of inbound marketing and has spent the years since working at the intersection of go-to-market, partnerships, and distributed teams. Based out of the Boston area. Welcome, Sean. Appreciate you joining me on Behind the Build.
Absolutely. Thanks, Curtis. Great to be here.
Isn't it nice to hear your bio read back to you?
It really is. I felt very accomplished for a minute there. I was like, tell me more about what I've done, So I did, point of clarification. I spent a lot of time at HubSpot, but I technically got my start with Nextel cell phones back in the day.
You're dating yourself.
Walkie-talkie. I'm dated. I've accepted. Now listen, if you look at my beard, I am dated with the amount of gray that's popping in there. So HubSpot. Let's get into all of that stuff. I'm actually very curious, about your career path. I mean, you've been in go-to-market and partnerships for a couple decades. Yeah.
And that time as an early HubSpot person back when inbound marketing was kind of sort of still a newish idea.
Yeah.
What pulled you into that kind of work in the first place?
Yeah. I'd spent probably 8 or 9 years in different roles prior to HubSpot, really early career stuff. Literally Nextel, I ran a franchise group for them out of New England.
Wow. Okay.
I spent time in a couple of startups early on, product manager, running partnerships. I was a scrum master for a little while. So that classic early tech career where I had a lot of applicable skill sets and I would get pushed into different roles, particularly during high growth startups that were also trying to find product market fit, right? And I was in the video game industry for a while as a biz dev guy, classic marquee partnerships, working with Disney and AMD and Dell and Post Foods and these big companies. But that was on the West Coast, and came back to Boston. I'm a New England guy. And when I was heading to Boston, I took a really close look at what companies were there and who was doing something that was interesting and that resonated with me. And HubSpot was the top pick. Where they were in terms of the inbound marketing message really resonated with me. And I had enough of a network through friends, through people I knew, to get in there both as a candidate, but also as someone who knew some folks in there, which is a classic way to get into a high growth company. Because at the time, HubSpot for years was harder to get a job at than it was to get into most Ivy League schools from a percent of people they accepted type of thing. So, I was lucky enough to get in front of the right people, and I was really drawn to the mission. I love the content from their founder and stuff, but you're absolutely right. It was early days, man. Leading with, thought leadership, leading with content, trying to pull people in with value that was free feels elementary kind of today, but back then was actually pretty exciting and different than what a lot of folks were doing. So, it attracted me, and luckily made it in there and got in there. Started literally as a direct sales rep for a couple of months because I was looking for a home.
It's and your journey into partnerships is interesting, right? Because I see a lot of folks come in from either the product side or the biz dev side, right? I didn't realize you have a lot of that product background, which gives you a really interesting lens to look at opportunity through, right?
For
Um,
sure.
because a lot of the folks that come in through the biz dev side, they're evaluating the maybe the commercialization aspect, and then their next step is
Hmm.
really to hand it off to product, right? And you're able to actually see it through both of those lenses from the seat that you sit in. Um, and it's funny because, right, it's not quite sales, not quite products, not quite marketing, right? So
Hmm.
from from that seat that you're in, how do you describe what you do to the people who think that partnership just means like finding co-marketing deals?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, sometimes it does, but it can be kind of an interesting nebulous function. And what I often say is partnerships is this interesting intersection of the entire business, right? And that's what really attracts me to it is you have to almost be a generalist in every single function of a business in
Yeah.
order to properly integrate a partnership because it's constant cross-functional navigation and you're often working with uh, different functions at your partners too, right? So you need to be able to speak that language. So, look at its core, a partnership person is a relationship manager, and we are sourcing and we are stewarding relationships between organizations, and we are
Mhm.
bringing the right stakeholders in from both sides to ensure that what we're co-creating drives value and lift for everybody involved. Because if you're going in it one-sided, which unfortunately there are examples of organizations that take a really one-sided approach to this type of stuff, it doesn't create the same sort of brand loyalty. It doesn't create the same sort of lift that a really effective bi-directional partnership can create for organizations out there. So yeah, it's relationship development and it's developing tactical plays that are supporting and driving long-term strategies.
Um, First of all, I know who I'm calling when I need to put together this my dictionary on how this because that was really well articulated. Actually, it's incredibly well put. You're
Thank you.
you're almost at this intersection of business and product, but also sort of like general ecosystem function, right? Like
Yes.
you're vetting all of these things, right, as a
Mm.
manager of relationships, but at the same time, you have
Hmm.
to be able to look at it through this like exceptionally critical both business and product um, perspective, I guess. So
Yeah,
you're leading partnerships at Oyster, and I guess for anyone unfamiliar, maybe we should start there. Tell us a
sure.
little bit about Oyster. What is it, and
Sure.
what are general problems, right, that you're trying to solve there?
Yeah. So Oyster is awesome. We are about a 6-year-old company. We're post Series D right now, driving hard towards profitability, which is super exciting. Very high growth company. We're a global employment platform, is what we are. So, as you said earlier, our tagline is we help companies everywhere hire talent anywhere. What that means is we're enabling organizations to have global, remote, and diverse workforces in a really easy way. The core problem that companies face right now is a talent shortage. Talent for hiring across almost every role right now is sparse. People are staying in jobs longer right now and they're hesitant to make moves. So finding the right folks is a big, big challenge for organizations. And companies that are addressing this with a global and remote workforce, I think are able to tackle this a lot faster. And that's what Oyster really allows you to do. So, challenge you're located in the United States, you want to hire a full time employee in Portugal. You either need a legal entity in Portugal or you need an employer of record, which is our core product, to act as your legal entity there. The reason you don't necessarily want to open an entity is it's expensive, it's
Yeah.
cumbersome, and it opens you up to all sorts of liability and risk. There is tax, legality, etc., that you have to keep an eye on there. It's going to cost you 6 figures to open it. It's probably going to cost that almost every year to maintain it. So we have massive legal team, massive AI driven intelligence engine, that uses our in-house expertise as well as out-of-house expertise that we work with and we've worked with for years to ensure that end to end we understand the compliance, the legal, the tax perspective on full-time employment in every country in the world, save a couple sanctioned countries, and every jurisdiction within said country, right? Every province in Canada, right? Like
Yeah.
every state in the United States and so forth, because there's a multiple of complexity there. So we bring employer of record. We also allow you to hire global contractors anywhere in the world. And that really allows organizations to scale their teams remotely, diverse workforce, which helps with product market fit, which accelerates revenue and all that type of stuff. But it also lowers, generally speaking, your per headcount cost. And that's a core thing. We work with a ton of early stage organizations who are trying to extend that runway. And I think,
Yeah.
the reality is today, when we're looking at AI's impact on businesses, right? And how we're all trying to streamline, we are all cognizant of what our spend on talent is right now. And so thinking globally allows you to take advantage of highly skilled talent in other markets that may be within different salary bands around the world. And they can help you to extend your runway, hire an engineer in Portugal versus San Francisco, way different
Right.
economics there. So
Yeah.
that's what we're bringing to the market right now, and it's working great for thousands of companies.
I can imagine. I mean, I see that really distinct mission, I think, around keeping
Mm,
high-paying jobs in a lot of developing countries or developed
absolutely.
countries, that have more accessible talent. And I guess I can see now, where that comes from and why it matters, I think, to,
Yeah. I
all the
mean, look,
companies that you work with.
yeah, look, our founder, who he was our CEO for a while, is currently our executive chairman. Amazing guy, Tony Yamos, and Tony, displaced person himself, right? And he's a multi-company founder. And when he founded Oyster, it was exactly to do that, right? It is to keep high-paying jobs in developing economies. It is to help democratize the world. And adjacent to that, we really want to be an example. Like we're eating our own dog food every day. Our team is dispersed across 65 different countries, right? So on a
65, wow.
daily basis, I'm working with somebody from Africa, Asia, South America, and it's incredible. And it helps us to truly be ahead of where our customers are
Yeah.
because we are literally living the experience that they are having or they're going to
Yeah.
have. But it also helps us, I think, to have a much more progressive and impactful culture, therefore a much more progressive and impactful trajectory as an organization
Yeah.
because we really believe in what we're doing.
I can see that. I mean, obviously, I can see it. You really believe in what you're doing, but I actually can see how that kind of impact you're talking about. A lot of people, Sean, I think, lump employer of record platforms together.
Mm, hmm.
Um, and I'm kind of curious, from where you sit, what do most companies or people misunderstand about what an EOR actually
Yeah,
does and where it kind of fits in the HR stack?
yeah. We fit interesting, right? Like, look, EOR for all intents and purposes is middleware between employer and employee, and so there are a lot of players out there doing this, and we kind of broadly see the market in three ways. There are very tech first players. They are tech platforms. They tend to be kind of wide and shallow with a bunch of different tech products in there.
Mhm.
And the vulnerability that we see that creating is EOR in particular, global employment. It's a very human based business. There's a lot of complicated questions that come up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of changes that happen to laws around employment, taxation, compliance, PTO,
Yeah.
probationary periods, all that type of
Mhm.
stuff, right? It's evolving on a day to day basis around the world. So if you have a multi product set and you're supporting all those, you don't necessarily have that baked in expertise. And so it tends to create some vulnerability around that. So there's your tech first players. There's legacy players who have great businesses who kind of started the EOR space for all intents and purposes. And a lot of these legacy guys are really good, great expertise, but they tend to be kind of behind on tech, and they
Mm,
tend to be operating more like a consulting company, which comes with consulting company costs.
yeah,
There's a middle
that's my head went
category,
first.
right?
Yeah,
Exactly, right? And there's a middle category that, Oyster fits in really well. It's a balance of tech and people. And we're a human first EOR is what we like to say, right? We're not the one you hear about all the time because you don't want to hear about us. If an EOR is making news and you're talking about it, it
yeah,
means there's
something's
a
going wrong.
challenge there, right?
Right,
Exactly. And so we have this great balance of a really nice consumer grade software type of platform that an HR manager, an HR director, a people ops person, and your employees, for that matter, your team members is the vernacular in EOR for the folks you employ, they can pick up and use without a second thought, right? It's the same as picking up your iPhone. But we also have this incredibly deep human-based service engine that allows people to quickly and accurately get the information they need, get their questions answered, and ensure when those complex situations come up, because they do. We've
yeah.
led teams, and people, there's complicated stuff that comes up with people, right? And when that comes up and you're like, how do I handle paternal leave in France, which is a whole different podcast in and of itself to get into
Yeah,
the nuance of that.
I
But
bet.
once you get there, you want a person. You don't want to just have a chat bot telling you this type of
Right.
stuff. And so I think that's the difference. I think broadly, like Oyster allows you to do it tech first, but it ensures you have people behind that are really going to answer your question. We have HR experts and HR business partners across the vast majority of countries that we support who are folks who are native to that country, live there, speak the language, and understand and have literal people management experience that they can bring to the table and consult with you to ensure that you are providing the best experience for your team while also providing the best experience for your organization and candidly protecting your organization as well. Because again, there's a lot of
Yeah.
vulnerability and compliance stuff that can come into play with this type of space.
I want to like lean in a little bit to this
Sure.
distributed work. You
Mm,
mentioned that your own team is employed through Oyster, which I
yeah.
love, right? You mentioned you're eating your own dog food, right? I love that.
Yes.
What kind of things have you learned about distributed work by living it that you don't
Mm.
think people running offices or hybrid setups maybe fully grasp?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I have a lot of experience with this. My sales team at HubSpot was the first one to go remote, like have fully remote
Oh
employees, right?
yeah,
So like I
okay.
wrote some of the book on this type of stuff, and I'm a huge proponent of it, right? Like I'm a parent, like all that type of stuff. Like remote work enables me to do a really good job for Oyster, and it allows me to do a really good job for my family too. And that's where I see remote work as being so critical to people, to the world, to development, right? So, look, one of the things that I think a lot of people miss is understanding how we work and making that a part of your culture and your onboarding, right? So you're in an office, you get hired, you go to that office. There's kind of an ingrained rhythm of work that just happens in an
Yeah.
office. People work from 8:39 to noon. They go to lunch. They come back from lunch. They get some coffee. They work the rest of the day. They leave. There's some meetings. Everybody gets that, right? When you have a distributed team, when you have a remote workforce, it's unreasonable of me to assume somebody in South Africa is working the same hours as me.
Right. Yep.
So even my head of partner enablement, who's in Vancouver, working with teams that are in Portugal or wherever, right? It's unreasonable. We're not always on the same thing. So understanding how we work and really creating rhythm and systems that support that is one of the most critical things to success with a distributed team. That means, how do we document things? How do we set or don't set meetings for that matter, how do we even write an effective Slack message in order to ensure that I'm communicating what I need and I'm also communicating what the expectation is for the folks reading it, right? So that type of stuff is critical. And we have something called Follow the Sun at Oyster. And it is thinking about wherever the sun is sort of shining, broadly speaking. Summer hours can change this quite a bit, and so can if you live, near the pole. But look, broadly speaking, we think about it as okay, if the sun's up there, probably this person is working. But that's not even always universally true, right? So when somebody joins us, we do this whole process about how we work, what our expectations are, how you should expect to communicate, what type of timeline you should expect on responses and things like that, how you should document stuff, how you should leverage Slack for async communication, and how you should even think about whether or not you need an actual in-sync meeting versus an async
Yeah,
conversation
sure.
about something. So
That's funny.
it's a framework question, I think, is ultimately what it is. And I think it's very easy to look past frameworks when you're in a location together because people just come together and you sort of the highest person on the totem pole within that place sets the rhythm, right? And so very different async. I think it creates a flatter organization, which is good because that enables people to feel safer expressing their ideas, which is really, really important. We are better together than we are by ourselves. I thoroughly believe that within business. So that's where I see so many advantages from this type of thing. I'll say one more thing, and we can dig in a bunch of areas here. But the other thing is the expectation part of delivery. And there are questions like if your function is sales, right? You're async. There's nobody looking over your shoulder. Really, you got to understand what your delivery expectations are, and you got to have mutual understanding between you and whomever your upline type colleague is to ensure that you're delivering on things. And a lot of the ability to nail that comes down to who you hire and having a really good focused hiring process is essential to building an effective remote team, which is get part of that expertise we try to bring to our clients at Oyster is here's how you do this well, and we're constantly experimenting with it ourselves.
I really like Follow the Sun. It made me giggle a little bit because I'm picturing somebody in Alaska getting a message at 1 a.m. on in the middle
That's
of the
right.
summer.
Yeah, that's where it doesn't work well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, by and large, I appreciate that visual. And I think,
sure,
this would be helpful, I think, for folks maybe listening here. But I think a lot of leaders maybe and maybe this is more generally speaking, you treat
sure.
remote and distributed like
Mm.
the same thing.
Mm.
So, I'm curious. I mean, do you define them the same
Mhm.
way from your vantage? What's the actual difference? Is there one? Why does it matter?
Interesting. Yeah. Look, I think you have a remote employee, and I think in the way that term has grown with the current generation of companies, that means that we have a mothership and there's a couple people who are remote and they come into the mothership from time to time, right? So I think the implication there usually is that there's some sort of HQ that exists. People are going to come back. A distributed team, I think, is defined more so, and I'll bet somebody like Boston Consulting Group has a write up on this. So maybe we're misquoting something, but like I see that more as defined as your entire organization is distributed and remote from each other, right? You don't have an office you're going to, and that's our approach. Like we have locations, we have entities everywhere, right?
Yeah.
That's how EOR works. We have to have entities, but we don't have any offices. And so I think that's it. But to be honest with you, it's probably nuance and it probably really depends on who's saying the words, because I think a lot of people are probably going to assume they are effectively the same thing. But the way I see it, distributed really leans into this is the ethos of our organization
Yeah.
is we are all in different places, but we're all working towards the same goals.
So I have kind of question really about
Mm.
when this breaks down, and
Mhm.
because in some organizations it does,
Sure.
and I think that maybe let's start a level higher than that.
Mm.
I think for a lot of SMBs or mid market, that are hiring internationally for the first time, I'm kind of curious what catches them off guard about managing
Mm.
people across borders, time zones, entities, right? For people doing
Yeah,
this for the first time, there's going to be things that they encounter that they didn't
for
expect or that
sure.
they're not used to dealing with. And then when that environment, when that distributed
Mm.
environment breaks down, what do you see being the root cause? Is it
Mm.
the model? Is it the manager, the culture, something else? Is it
Sure.
something that had maybe originally caught them off guard that they weren't used to doing? Yeah, so I
Yeah.
just talk to me a little bit about those things.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think probably the stuff that is initially harder for people to grasp. And, I'm an American, I'm coming at this from kind of an American perspective. And a lot of companies, a lot of our customers are in the United States. And one of the things that you have to get used to, and this is true for anybody anywhere in the world, is that work is defined, integrated, and has different rhythms and cultural expectations around the world. And I don't think that you recognize that until you truly work with a global team. I could see that, like, I'm in Boston and I work with someone from California. There's sometimes a different rhythm of getting stuff done, right? There's maybe a different casual nature to it. But working from as an American with people from Europe and other parts of the world, you truly start to notice how communication rhythms and communication norms are very, very important to acknowledge, to understand cross culturally, because you can get into unintentional quagmires when I'm saying one thing and I'm a very direct New Englander who's going to just tell you how it is, whereas other cultures are not quite as direct. They're going to be less inclined for that sort of direct or potential conflict that comes out of sometimes
Yep.
disagreeing with folks. So I think first time going into it, you gotta take the time. There's a great book that I'm forgetting the name of right now, but I read years ago that really helps you to think about how communication norms and rhythms are not the same. And ultimately, right, where people communication is how shit gets done. And if we're not communicating well, we're not getting things done. So that's a big, big part of it.
Mm.
The challenges, the mistakes I've seen, right? Not being clear on the mission is a mistake. You know, you don't get that same, look, I've worked in offices and there were exciting times. HubSpot, we were all in the office at first, right? And it was exciting because we all knew what we were doing. We all knew what we were driving towards, right? Um, at a remote level, if you're not clearly articulating your mission, if you're not clear about your goals, if you're not clear how you measure those, I think there's a risk sometimes of people sort of falling off the train a little bit, not really
Yeah.
feeling as connected as they could be. And that can stem from the top, that can stem from, first line management as well. Because if folks aren't clear on why we're doing something, then I'm just sitting in my house, or I'm sitting at a co-workspace somewhere or something like that. And I'm like, well, I don't know why we're doing that. And there's nobody here to hold me accountable as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned if I just close this laptop. So being clear about the why and the mission, I think is super important, because it's not just going to come from sitting around with your colleagues. Creating space for organic interaction is also really important. We have a lot of different social channels at Oyster, for instance. We have intentional, you can use a bot and it'll set you up on a quick coffee conversation with a random colleague every, couple of weeks or month, depending on what you want to
Mm.
do. Things like that are really great because I don't have the opportunity to just develop a relationship with you because we happen to go to lunch together, right? It's not how it works. So you've got to be intentional about that, and you've got to find ways like we do with silly channels about like social yell is a channel where you go in and you type all in caps and whatever's on your mind, right? Like, I can't believe the school bus is late. This is ridiculous. And everyone's just like pluses it and comments and all that stuff. So finding some ways to bring that silly energy, I think actually is important,
Yeah.
right? Because you got to have a little bit of fun too. And I think if you're
Yeah.
not having fun, it's very easy not to. It's very easy just to focus on
Yeah.
work. The last thing I'll say personally as a leader is I spend a lot of time with my people helping them to think about boundaries. And if you don't do that, you're going to have people who burn themselves out pretty quickly, is what I've found. And I used to have this colleague of mine, and she'd be online 9 o'clock at night, and I would start to intentionally take a quick look at things and see if she was still on Slack and still green. And I would be like, "Stop working, please." And I
Yeah.
know that I'm technically your boss and you don't expect that, but like, you're overworking yourself right now. So trying to help people and modeling from the top down that you as a person matter and you need boundaries because outside that door is my son's room and so forth, right? And that's the really important things you got to remember, that just because you're working from home or wherever you might be working from, you still need to be able to unplug, and that's
Yeah.
really important. So it's a mistake I see people make where they don't try to ingrain that understanding, and people burn out fast, is what I've noticed in remote culture.
Well, this is kind of a good segue into this because
Sure.
we can kind of click into something that I think you have some strong opinions on, and I know across your career, including partnerships work, where
Hmm.
deals live or die. You know, you've seen a lot of behaviors, I think, consistently get in the
Mm.
way of people doing good work together. I think, and I
So
guess what I mean is, I'm sure things are probably coming up in your mind. One pattern you flagged, I know,
yeah,
is this idea of lack of follow through.
yeah.
Um, where do you see that breaking down? Is it getting
Mm.
worse? Are we just noticing it more because we have tools to measure that stuff?
Yeah.
And is that follow through problem different in distributed environments compared to in office ones, or is it the same one, just fewer places to hide?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to think it's kind of the same, and I think, look, I think we're in an interesting moment right now where I have seen a lot of productivity gains from things like AI and
Mhm.
tools and stuff like that that we're integrating into our professional settings. On the other side, that has led to changes in staff, right? Personnel changes and things like that. And so, result right now, I think, is this idea of we can use AI, for instance, to do a lot, which might allow us to reduce our staff. Now we have a smaller staff doing a ton of stuff in addition to using AI to do that stuff. I think follow through comes when you don't try to meter the workload for people. Lack of follow through,
Hmm,
excuse me. And
interesting.
so when I'm piling on, and I know I do this sometimes, particularly to one person on my team, and I literally a couple hours ago called myself out and in a one-on-one with them, and I was like, "Hey, I've asked a bunch of stuff from you, so I want to be clear. Let me prioritize it for you." So lack of follow through comes from sort of too many tasks in many respects, and I think it's easy to disappear right now into the noise of an organization, into the let's deal with this immediate challenge in front of us, as opposed to thinking about the long term vision that we're trying to do and the long term strategic plays that we're trying to do. So, my advice, if this is a challenge, and we have largely conquered this at Oyster because we're very good at prioritizing things, we're very
Okay.
good at communicating. Here's the priority. Here's what's urgent. Here's the deadline. Here's the things that are sort of allowed to fall off, right? And this is what I was trying to do today with somebody on my team. It's really, if you dump a lot of stuff on somebody, you don't give them prioritization, you don't give a North Star, so what needs to be done by what date, you're not clear on expectations, I think you can run into a challenge with follow through. I also think you run into a challenge with follow through if you're not clear on the fact that things don't need to be perfect. right? We need done, not perfect. Everyone said that for years, don't let perfect be the enemy of done. I've heard that, 100,000 times at this point in my career. And it's valuable advice. And I think if people have this expectation that they have to deliver a perfect product every time, not product, but I'll say a perfect outcome every time, they're not going to get stuff done.
Yeah.
And then you're going to
Well,
have tasks fall off.
perfect, I think also is, it is a moving target, as I often
Sure.
as
Yeah,
I often try and teach my perfectionist children
for
that
sure.
there's no
Yes.
such thing, because what's also
Yeah.
perfect to one person is going to be different to another
It's
person.
totally
And
subjective.
so,
Well,
you
things are also moving so fast right now, man.
yeah, oh,
Like, I
totally,
mean, what
totally.
what is a good idea today in 3 weeks could be a terrible idea, right? I mean,
Well,
think about,
let me
yeah, go
touch
ahead.
on that for a second, because one thing that was going through my mind as I was listening to you
Mm.
is this thinking about, like, people also, like, lob problems instead of bringing solutions. So
Totally,
what's
totally.
actually going on there? Is it a skills gap? Is it a confidence issue? Is it a culture issue? Is it personality? Is it something else? And as a leader, how do you train that out of a team, even when maybe that you don't necessarily sit next to every day?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Look, it's common, and I see this with people at all levels of experience, right? Su Successful executives and leaders, I see it a lot less, obviously, right? But there's still, in my career, plenty of folks I've worked with who you'd be surprised how good they are at identifying a problem,
Yeah.
but not actually trying to
Right.
solve that. But they just want to voice it to somebody, right? And everybody does it every once in a while. I mean, I do it every once in a while, and I'm like, like that's not helpful, But I actually think it is a lack of, so we train people how to do jobs, we give them technical skills, we teach you a sales process, a partner vetting process, we teach you programming languages, we teach you product development, project management, all this stuff, obviously thinking from my tech company lens here, right? But what we often don't teach people is critical thinking, is how to be truly effective, right? And it's good leaders who spend the time to help their people to answer their own questions and to think through the problem from what it is to what the long-term implications, short-term implications, et cetera, and what the solutions are. So I think it's something that is skipped easily in terms of career and professional development.
Yeah.
And you are lucky if it's kind of ingrained in you early from a boss, maybe a good professor in college, who knows, right?
Right.
The guy, one of the founders of a company I worked for early in my career, was challenging, but helped me to shape a mindset of, I don't tell you what's wrong, I tell you what's wrong and what we did about it. And if I don't know what to do about it, I give you options and I ask you and I tell you I need some guidance as to what we do about this. There is a fear element in there. People are afraid to bring their own ideas to the table, right? So you have to, if you're not getting ideas, if you're not getting solutions from people, you got to think about if it's ingrained in your culture. You got to think if people feel safe enough to actually express what's truly on their mind, too.
I mean, I think there are a lot of organizations who purport this idea, I think, that they want to promote risk taking, right? Take risks, be bold. But then at the same
Hmm.
time, right, when people do, often, you're going to find out that they're going to get canned because of it. And so I think that that's where a
Yeah.
lot of that
Yeah.
fear can really germinate from. You've also
Yeah.
talked before about, this idea that people think through things about really only 80% of the way. And I'm curious if
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that's where some of it comes. They think about the problem, they sort of ideate
Sure.
around, like, what does better look like? And then
Yeah.
it kind of ends there. And practically speaking, like,
Mm.
what would that look like if they push through the last 20%? And you just talked a lot about this idea, and I'm sort of
Yeah.
summarizing what you said, but really about
Sure. Sure.
self-awareness, right? people who don't follow through, who hand off problems, who stop short, who
Yeah.
maybe don't even realize they're doing it, right? You're
Yeah.
talking about the folks who get the training early on, or have had those conversations, or who have had the boss that sort of walks them through that process,
Hmm.
probably also own quite a bit more self-awareness, right?
I think definitely. Yeah, I mean, look, this is, I'm an old sales leader at heart, right? And like, this was the thing I talked to all my sales reps about is you are, and this probably originated in like objection handling back in the day, right? You get an objection in sales, and most people think about 70-80% around how they can solve that, how they can address that. And if you can get yourself to take a full walk, to give a 100% walk around this problem, that allows you to start to think about all the different perspectives on something, right? It allows you to understand where it's coming from, not just from your perspective, but from every perspective out there. So that might involve talking to other people. That might involve turning off and going for a walk and letting your subconscious run a little bit too,
Sure.
And some of that comes from this do it now type culture that we live in sometimes, right? And really disciplined, effective people I've seen are really good at asking for time. They're really good at saying, I'm not sure, let me come back to you on that, because that allows them to do that 100% thinking. This is something that, you think about what we're saying about partnerships in the beginning, man. I mean, it's the good effective partnership people, because of how vast the impact can be on an organization. They're thinking 100%. They're going around and they're saying, what is the impact on sales, on CSM, on product, on finance, et cetera, right? And that's 100% thinking that allows me and allows anyone who can practice that type of thing to be a lot more effective. And you do that in every single role. I think UX researchers are really good at this type of stuff, right? Because
Mhm.
it's part of their job. But we have to sort of think like a scientist in everything these days, because there are so many quick implications. The market's moving so quickly on us right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's all a part of knowing yourself, knowing your thought process. The self-awareness thing, I think, is critical that you're pointing out, and knowing where to ask for help, right? Like, that is my weakness, is asking for help, right? I know that's my weakness, so I'm able to kind of conquer it, right? And that's where sometimes I'm
Yeah,
at 95% of thinking about things. So I go to our CEO or I go to our CRO and
sure.
I say, you know what? I'm missing something here. Help me get this last leg of this thing so I can have a full picture on what I'm thinking about here, and then we're going to come to a better solution. To the point of what I said earlier, we are stronger together in all things
Yeah, I
when it
love
comes to
that.
business.
Um, I do want to make sure we have a minute to talk a little bit about future of work. So let's kind of pull back the lens a
Hmm.
little bit, right? When you think
Mm.
about the next 5 years, what's getting too much attention? What's getting too little attention? Yeah, talk to me about AI. Where are we headed? Give me your.
Yeah. So I think it's really interesting that, at least here in the United States, all across like news channels right now, there were three different commencement speakers at college graduations who mentioned AI and got booed like crazy by the
Wow,
graduates.
really?
So I was kind of getting a kick out of that. So look, I think AI is awesome. I think we have to recognize that it's about productivity gains and it's about optimization. It's not about replacement, right?
Yeah.
And look, BSG, Boston Consulting Group, 3 4 months ago, I could be a little off on that time. They put something out that basically said, if effectively you have people doing more work now because they're asking AI to do something, and instead of just doing it, and then they got to review all the work from AI and get the job done, right? So it
Yeah.
is, I think, it's going to be there. It's going to get better and better and better, right? We have to figure out how to apply it in a really intelligent way to your business. Right
Yeah.
now, thankfully we're extreme. This is the Oyster ethos, is we are a thoughtful organization, right? And we're inserting it into all sorts of different areas for both our customers in terms of
Mhm.
really smart ways that it can help to address, here's what the PTO practice, here's the best practice on salary within a given country, and then have a conversation about how you may want to optimize that.
Yeah.
But we're also inserting it into like our operating rhythm internally right now. And we are trying to open up to our staff in a big way of, hey, use these tools, tell us what you did. But that's it. It's supplementing good work. It's not replacing a worker or anything like that, right? It's optimizing, it's making us faster. So look, there's no question that's going to be there. You got to keep up with it in order to be there. I honestly think distributed teams are a big part of what the future is. We already see the gradual shift in leadership to your generation, my generation. We're probably about the same, honestly. And then the kids below us, right? The kids who are booing that commencement speaker, right? These are the future leaders, and these folks care about quality of life.
Yeah.
They
Yep.
care about flexibility.
Yeah.
They don't want to sit in an office. They want to sit on a beach, right? And so I think we're going to see a continued growth of distributed teams, of the necessity to be able to address that need from your staff, and acknowledging that companies are going to expand. And look, I think, people have talked about this kind of SaaS apocalypse coming. I don't know where I am on that, but it's an interesting question when you look at all these tools out there that
Yeah.
can
There's a
kind of
lot of them.
replicate quickly.
Yeah.
Good friend of mine, I just had a drink with somebody. She's like, I vibe coded this entire app, and it's a business now, and I'm making money off of it. And I'm like, this
Yeah.
is amazing, you know?
Great.
So the speed is really, really
Yeah.
interesting right now, and it's only going to accelerate. So we have to think about, how does that impact core functions and staffing questions and things like that? And understanding that we're going to live side by side with things like AI is going to be really important as we think about what future organizations look like as well. And I definitely don't have all the answers to that one, but
Well,
trying to. That's for sure.
I mean, I appreciate that perspective. It's a good one, right? And I think you pretty much summarized probably what the majority of us are thinking or feeling. But
Yeah,
um, Sean, thank you, man. I appreciate you joining me today. This was
absolutely.
a lot of fun.
Yeah, appreciate it, Curtis. Really fun to be
Um,
here.
yeah, and I want to say thanks to all you watching and listening. Mustard Hub Voices behind the build. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Check out mustardhub.com to learn more and discover how we help companies become destinations for workplace happiness and turn culture into a competitive edge. Until next time.